So welcome everyone. Good afternoon to our session of Art at Work, the Making Public Art with Specialist Fabricators. My name is Kathy Tykolis. I'm the Education Public Programs Coordinator at the Richmond Art Gallery. I'm happy to step in and host today. Our guest presenters today are Jock Hildebrand, a bronze casting specialist of Jock Hildebrand Foundry, Peter Steinberg, custom steel fabricator of Solid Rock Steel Fabricating Company Limited, and Kim Honor, pioneer of original glass tile of interstyle glass. And we also have Gabrielle Acquizzi. I believe you're also of interstyle glass as well. We will kind of go through that order. They'll each do their presentations, and then we'll open it up for questions to the audience. For those of you who might be new to the Art at Work program, I'll just briefly introduce it and tell you a little bit about us before we get started. First of all, we are coming to you from the city of Richmond, which is on the ancestral and territorial lands of the Hunkaminam-speaking peoples, which are the nations living all across the Fraser River Delta, including the Musqueam. And welcome to all of you from wherever you are zooming in from. For those new to the program, Art at Work's a series of free professional development workshops designed specifically for artists and arts organizations. The program is presented in partnership with the City of Richmond Art Services, Richmond Public Art Program, and the Richmond Art Gallery. It is intended to provide artists with knowledge and skills relevant to pursuing a professional practice in the field of public art, performance, and visual and community arts. We do offer these free workshops throughout the year from February to October, and we encourage you to send us feedback on any topics you would like us to cover in upcoming months. And you can find out more about upcoming sessions as well on the City of Richmond website, as well as the Richmond Art Gallery website. So I'm going to let you each introduce yourself and maybe your company, and then you can share your slideshow or direct me to share your slideshow with the public. So first we're going to go to we were going to go to Jock, but it looks like he's just gone offline. So did we want to go with Peter?
Sure,
perhaps?
I'm fine with that. So, well, thanks everyone for your patience as we get this going. My name is Peter Steinberg. I'm the owner of Solid Rock Steel Fabricating. And I've been in the business, well, my whole life. My father started our business, and so I'm still here. So yes, thank you. You can go to the next slide. So we're been in business for 60 years this year, locally owned and operated, proud to fly the Canadian flag. And we're located in Surrey, BC. And we customize or specialize in the local supply and installation of custom architectural structural steel. And then, of course, we like to dabble in public artwork projects, and that's why we've been invited to come and share today of kind of our passion and what we do in the steel business. Next slide. So the services we provide, we're structural steel fabricators, so we work with mild steel, and then we can finish the mild steel with galvanizing, which is hot dip galvanizing, or finish paint it, sandblast, and put on epoxies or urethanes. We also work with weathering steel, or Core 10, as its trade name is called, Core 10 weathering steel. That's the steel that looks rusty. And we also work with stainless steel to a certain degree. And we start right with pre-construction advice and costing. So quite often I'll have artists phone me and they have a conceptual drawing, but they don't know how to build it. They don't know what products to use, what finishing. And so I'll walk them through with that, and then advise on a budget, which is obviously with artists. I don't know how you do it, but you never have enough money in your budget. And so we try to walk through that and advice. And then once this project start, we help with modeling and detailing. Detailing is what we call drafting. We actually make a shop drawing of every component, and the modeling, we use a 3D software called Tekla, which is connects with other softwares that a lot of artists use, like Rhino or Revit. and so on. And then once the job site's ready for the artwork, we can provide on-site 3D laser scanning. So if it's connecting between concrete columns, or there's embeds or slopes, then we can laser scan it and make sure that everything will be fabricated and fit. And then, of course, we provide our shop fabrication, where we cut, weld, grind, buff, drill holes, prepare all our steel, and then we'll, depending on the finish, we can send it out for galvanizing. There's only 2 plants in BC that do hot dip galvanizing, but we can do sandblasting. So when you have weathering steel or stainless steel, we can sandblast the mill scale that's off often. And then we can obviously paint it with the 3-coat system, epoxy urethane, graffiti coating, whatever you like. And then we have our own iron workers, the people that install the steel. So we'll take care of delivery and field installation. So that's just a quick run through of what we do. Now I just wanted to show some slides and pictures. First time doing a presentation like this, so didn't know quite what you as students or participants would like to see. But next slide. In 1998, I think I went back in my books. I think this is probably one of the first times I started seeing like decorative art work built into steel. This is an exit stair, guardrail panels, and a cruciform column. And so we're custom fabricators. So I am basically labor. That's what I provide, is the labor to cut and form and install steelwork. And this particular one, you can't quite see it because it's an old photo, but there were little cutouts of birds that were flying up the stairwell, and the architect wanted to know if we could do it. And 1998, 25 years ago, was 30 years ago almost, was the starting of plasma cutting, CNC cutting. And so that's when we really discovered that, hey, we don't mind doing some of these artwork jobs. Next slide. Because we're in Richmond, of course, we have to mention a couple artwork projects we've done in Richmond. On the Holly Bridge, little bridge that goes over the dike or canal there, right by the Richmond Speed Skating Oval, there's these sloped, they called it, the artwork is called ice blades, and they're augmented with lights and glass, and but the basic premise is a large steel pole that's sloped. And so again, we hadn't done lots of artwork, but we worked together with architects, engineers, and more so with the artists. Next slide. At the same project was a piece of work done by Janet Eckelman called the Water Sky Garden, which again is outside. And this is a huge representation of a gill net. And again, I don't claim to know why artists or how they get their inspiration for every piece of artwork, but this was inspired by being on the Fraser River. And it's this huge steel pipe that is supported by the building on one side and a big pole, steel pole on the other side. And if we go to the next slide, you can kind of maybe tell how big it is just by, this is how we assembled it. We took this large pipe that we fabricated and curved and painted, delivered it to the site on top of a shoring tower, and connected all the work together. And the next slide kind of shows a quick representation of what we call shop drawings. So this is our erection drawings or assembly drawings, and where we detail every connection. So even though the artist sometimes doesn't have, hasn't figured out how to connect the ropes or the wires to, or how to suspend a structure by engaging a structural engineer, that was done in this case by the city of Richmond. They engaged a structural engineer and an architect to work with Janet and came up with the details. And then we produce shop drawings so that we can shop fabricate all the components. So that's kind of two local Richmond jobs that we did 15 years ago. And next slide. So various artists that I work with. We've worked with Jill Anholt, a local Vancouver artist. And this was a job in Moose Jaw, where she had a whole bunch of curved arches, and it was pieces that were set up throughout the park. And so with working with her, we could optimize sizes and shapes for shipping, because obviously we fabricated it here in Vancouver, Surrey. Then we loaded it in crates and delivered it to the job site. Jill hired their own erection company to install it, but we were basically the fabricator. Go to the next slide. And another project that we did with her was very large project, over $1 million of supply and install moving surfaces. It's right outside at the end zone of the Lancaster Park in Ottawa. So when you're kicking field goals, you'll see this large artwork in the background on the hill. And it was all stainless steel, cut and mitered, all shop assembled in our yard. We built it outside in our yard and then broke it down in components, shipped it on flat decks all the way to Ottawa, and then sent our crew, the same crew that had fabricated it, went to Ottawa to assemble it on the hillside. There was a footings poured in the hillside. We had them all surveyed, and we bolted the structure on there. And then the lower right photo, you can see there were a lot of LED lights interconnected. So I, as a fabricator, I don't work with all components. I just do work with steel, but then the artist will hire other trades. So if we go to the next slide, you can kind of see how beautiful it looks at night. This is her moving structures again with the LED lights coming on. Every piece custom made, and a beautiful piece of artwork. Huge, probably 300 feet long in total, 25 feet high. Locally, we've also done some work with Jill Anholt. Next slide is there's a project called The Flats at Tesoro, which is down by the Science World in Vancouver on Quebec and Maine, in Quebec and First area. And every underground parkade has a lot of air exhausts that come up through the ground so they can get ventilation. And so part of her design was, how can she make an artistic bench and let the air flow through it? And so this, it's again, sometimes a picture can't show all the intricacies of the steel fabrication, but these are blades of 1/4-inch mild steel flat bar, all welded 2 inches apart, and all hot dip galvanized to form this undulating wave, kind of like a boiling cauldron, and backlit with lights and a wood bench all the way around. And we did the steel work for it. And part of the same project was the next slide, which shows, again, eelgrass was Jill's representation of the flats, like bubbling water and eelgrass. And I don't have tons of photos here. I didn't know how our timing would go, but it's beautiful at night. There's LED lights lit inside it, and there's multiple holes. Every piece is custom fabricated. And the unique part here was Jill was hiding the exhaust stacks of the boiler down below, the emergency generator. And so inside 2 of these, the covers come apart, and there's a huge steel pipe that is the vent for the exhaust vent for the generator. And so combined art with the design made a beautiful, useful piece of art. And all these pieces of art, Jill kind of comes up with conceptually the sizes or not only Jill, but other artists as well have talked to us about what size should we use? What thickness should we use? How do we make it structurally strong enough? So we will engage an engineer. And in this case, there was a local engineer, CY Lowe, that we've engaged to do the structural engineering sizing so it can withstand, the earthquakes or wind loading, and also vandals, yahoos that climb over these pieces of art. You have to be considerate of the use and how it may get vandalized. So that's a few projects that we did with Jill. And the latest one we did with Jill, if you can go to the next slide, is the Iron Forest in North Vancouver in front of a new condominium project. And these are, this piece of art is so emblematic of a cedar trunk, with the cedar being really wide at the bottom and tapering up. And this was her artist concept drawing. And on the inside, we put stainless steel. So when you walk through that little opening there, you would see stainless steel and it would reflect all around. And how this came to be was, again, conceptual. Jill and her team produced a 3D model, and we, next slide, please. This is how we took their model, incorporated it into our software, and did budgeting exercise. So originally she wanted, I think, 22 of these ribs. We ended up with 17 because of costing. And but here we could actually rotate it around. And in our shop, we actually fabricated the whole unit all together, bolted it all together in 3 big sections. What you're looking at is actually weathering steel. So it's mild steel that has a special additive to it to help the rusting proceed to a certain degree, but then it stops rusting. It builds up a corrosive layer and it won't rust right through like regular mild steel. And so we sandblast it clean of all the mill scale, and that way we can put it outside in the rain or kind of help the weathering of the rust to start quicker. And then we'll deliver it out to the job site, install it on footings, concrete footings, and work together with the general contractor. Again, I don't always do every step of the way, meaning I don't do concrete footings or grouting or lighting unless it's simple and I can be part of the process. The next slide, please. Another artist we work with is Jacqueline Chu and Nancy Metz. Jacqueline Metz and Nancy Chu, sorry, local Vancouver people, another condo unit where they wanted to have a red fox and a black cat, and they needed a house or a frame. And this was a white aluminum frame that we worked with, got an engineer involved, powder coated it, and installed it in Burnaby. I think what I'm just an overall comment is I've really liked the public art process that a lot of municipalities have initiated, right? Where if you want to build a huge project, then you have to have a space for public art. And it certainly helped all the artists make a living, and then they need someone to fabricate and glass, tile, electrical, wood, and steel, and helps all the trades, and it really beautifies their projects. So that's what we're seeing lots of lately is actually artwork on all these projects. So the next slide is another piece by Metz and Chu called The Great Blue Heron. And again, it's core 10 steel, weathering steel. I had my guy stand beside it just to give you a sense of the scale. It was in a garden in front of White Rock area of South Surrey, and structurally fastened to footings in the ground. Again, weathering steel. We actually stood it in our yard at the corner of our property. Many people drove by wondering what the big heron was doing there. And then when the job site was ready, was already pre-rusted, and we could deliver it to the job site. And this is actually hollow. It's 6 inches wide, and we took steel tubing and then sheathed it or covered it with solid plate and welded it and grinded all the corners together. We needed the internal strength of the tubing for structural reasons. Next slide. This is a little more random, but I've even been asked to help with I don't know if you call it public art. I call it public art. The city of Ladner wanted a sign at their little village that they called it the Ladner Village, and it's a triangular section, vertical section with holes in it, LED lighting, and the name inscribed cut out in it. And we helped with the design build. Again, engaged an engineer for structural reason, worked together with a lighting contractor to provide the backlighting. We did the white plexiglass that you see in the background. It had a removable panel for access for maintenance, and installed it on footings that the contractor of the plaza had built for us. Next. Another piece of artwork we've been involved with is Nancy Rubin. Nancy is a well-known American artist that does these fancy sculptures, and in this case, it's a whole bunch of canoes. It's called Winnie's Pleasure, and these boats or canoes are all fastened to a stainless steel support frame. And this support frame is what we built. It was designed by local California, actually, local engineer there, and then redesigned by a Canadian BC engineer. And Concord Pacific, I think it's that's their building in Burnaby. And we installed the stainless steel substructure. You can see the support frame in the background is the SkyTrain line. So you have to be very considerate about working in proximity of the SkyTrain and special safety procedures. And then after we installed our frame, Nancy had a crew that travels all over the world installing her artwork. And they installed all the canoes with all the guy wires and structural integrity. Again, we helped with coordinating that project for them. Next slide. Not really artwork, although I'm going to call it that because it's been one of our favorite projects, is down at Capilano Suspension Bridge Park. When you go across the bridge, you'll see the Treetop Adventures. And these are custom steel frames, powder coated, installed around trees. We worked together with the Capilanos Parks installer, and he installed all these frames, and each one is custom. And that's where expense comes in. If you have custom work, it's more expensive than buying, widgets and having lots of repetition. And our next slide is really the crown at Capilano Suspension Bridge, the cliff walk. We fabricated all these sections in our shop with 3D laser scanning of the cliff. All the hand rail was, we never installed the actual walkways. They were installed by their specialty team, again, of rope climbing technicians. And then we came on site and installed the stainless handrail. And it's been a highlight of, recently it was renamed Swift Walk when Taylor Swift was in town. And so a very kind of cool project. And next slide is just me saying thank you for the opportunity to share some of our experiences and our passion of working with steel. On the left, you see our shop in Surrey, our office personnel. We have about 20 people in the office. We have 30 people in the shop. On the right, you see some large frames for the Royal Centre project in Vancouver, a big canopy, and our crew of tradesmen. We have fabricators and welders and painters. And then I don't have pictured our iron workers. They're the guys that go on the job sites and install. And so thank you for the opportunity. And if you have any questions, I don't know, Kathy, are you doing that later?
Yes, so we'll,
Okay.
if that's okay, we'll just let
Yep,
everyone do their presentations and then, but I see a few people have sent in their questions and we'll
great.
get to those at the end. And
Thank you.
thank you though. That was lovely to see the work and to hear all about it. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. Jock, because you had, we'd lost you for a bit, so we skipped you. Are you okay to go ahead now?
So thanks so much for inviting me to do this. And I don't have slides, but what I want to do is I just want to lead people through the whole process. So when a client comes to me, they'll say, I want this done in bronze. And often they will have it done in various stages. So I'm going to go through the various stages that talk about where artists can join in if they want to go through the process and do a portion of that process themselves. So if somebody comes to me and they have a positive, and that can be a sculpture, which could be clay or stone, whatever, wood, and they want to make a bronze sculpture from that, the first thing that needs to be determined is, does it need a mold taken from it? So in my place, I do the various molds that enable me to make the wax. So I will take the positive, I'll make a mold. It could be a plaster mold. It could be a flexible mold of some type or another. It can be a fiberglass mold. But the object of putting that mold in place is that I can then make a wax from that mold. And this is essential because this is a lost wax casted method of casting. So determining the size of the piece is really essential. I need to know whether I need to weld pieces together or whether the whole thing can be cast in one piece. For a piece that's, let's say, 24 inches tall and 10, 15 inches wide and thick, basically I'll just take a mold from that. And generally, and depending on the complexity, and there's so many depends-ons here. Depending on the complexity, if it's a very simple thing, I likely will just do a plaster mold, and that's especially if it's a one-off. If there's an addition of more than one, then generally I will do a flexible mold, uh, which means that I can use that mold over and over again for different additions as we go along. So we have a mold. Into that mold, I will paint the wax that eventually is melted out. So we're going from a positive to a negative. When I paint the wax in, then I have another positive. Is that making sense so far? I hope so. There's a lot of stages to this. The wax is then gated and sprued, which means it allows for gas for the bronze to get poured into the mold, and for gas to escape from it. Sorry, for the bronze to be poured into the mold and the gas to escape from it. So that wax then goes to the ceramic shell department of my little business here. And that's where we dip the wax into a ceramic shell and we build a coating up. It generally takes between 10 to 15 days to build the coat up. It's coated once a day with the ceramic shell material. The ceramic shell material has been around for about 50 years, and it was a result of looking for a better method of producing aerospace parts. So it has a high fidelity reproduction. So basically, the ceramic shell looks like a great big a gooey slurry. I dip the wax in there, I take it out, and then I'll stucco it with colloidal silica of various grits, starting from like a 200 grit to like a 400 or 500 grit stucco. As I say, that proceeds day by day until it's done. It's got to have sufficient time to dry out, and then when that's all done, I check the ceramic mold, make sure it looks pretty good. It's all dry. It goes into the burnout kiln where the wax is burnt out, and I'm left with a hole that's exactly the same as the original positive. At that point, I double check the mold, the ceramic mold, make sure there's no leaks or anything in it, heat up the foundry, the furnace and the burnout kiln burn out the wax. When the wax is burnt out, it's involved and long, and that's why it is generally so expensive. The wax is eliminated from the ceramic shell mold. I heat them both up, the mold to 1700 degrees Fahrenheit, the bronze to 2250 degrees Fahrenheit. When everything is happy, I then take the molds out of the kiln where they've been preheated, and I pour the bronze in, as I say, at 225 degrees Fahrenheit. Voila, in a second, nothing turns into something that's virtually eternal. After that is done, if it's a big piece, I take all the portions out, I weld them all together, then I chase the joints, sandblast everything, and put a patina on. A patina is the chemical process that sort of artificially ages the bronze as it would happen in the world without patina on it. There's all kinds of different colors. You can go from red, blue, black, all kinds of various patinas, speckled kind of patina, something that looks like granite, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. After the patina is on, basically, there's a protective coating that goes on it, perhaps wax, perhaps it's a lacquer called Incralac. So that's the process. Now, when somebody approaches me, they'll say, you know, I've got this piece that I want cast in bronze, and I will generally say, please send me a photograph with some measurements, photographs of 3 sides, and then I'm able to make a quote about how much it's going to cost to have that piece completed. It's difficult today because most of my materials come from the States, so it's making material costs is a little difficult. I wonder if Peter has that problem right now too. Nevertheless, that is the whole process, and it starts off with a phone call to me so I can discuss the various parameters of the pieces. I do small pieces to very large pieces. The largest one I did actually was my own, 26 feet tall, bronze abstract blue heron that resides in Nelson, in the Riverside Park there. And that's pretty much my presentation. I'm surely happy to take questions at the end when that comes up. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. And thanks so much for listening to my long, boring, monotone kind of talk there. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was really informative. Good to hear about the whole bronzing process from start to finish. I'm sure there will be more questions coming on. I did throw your bio about your company just in the chat for people that were curious. And I will do the same for our next presenter. So are Kim and Gabrielle doing it together or?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will let you both take it away, and I will put your company information in the chat as well for people.
Oh, good afternoon. My name is Kim Hauner. I'm one of the founders of Interstyle Ceramic and Glass. Interstyle was started in 1977, based in Vancouver. Gabriella is our chief art coordinator. She basically prepares all the artwork and a million functions that have to do with selecting colors and naming the colors and all the things that are kind of tedious, but she's fantastic at that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we make a tile and how it might pertain to the work that you could be doing. And so you see the first slide here is our half of our color selection. So if you go to a tile store today, you'll see a lack of color. You know, most of the residential commercial tiles tend to be gray tones and beiges and so forth, not a huge amount. And that's because the clay itself it comes in either white or red, which the red comes from like a terracotta red, which comes from iron oxide. For that reason, we actually don't use a lot of ceramic in our work. We actually use glass because glass doesn't have any color. And then when we add the color, we can create a very bright range and a very extensive range. So our basic range of colors is 240. So let's go to the next slide. So that you see the first set here. Oh, okay. So that's actually the 240 on the one slide. Sorry. And then the next thing, yeah, there you go. There you go. The next thing that we offer is a lot of selection of sizes. So each element, let's call it a pixel in this case, we can make a very tiny pixel or we can make very large pixel. So, and that's depends a little bit on how you want to develop the artwork. So if we start with very tiny pixels, I think the most obvious then is that we color the pixels and then start to develop let's say a design based on these tiny little pixels. But if we choose a large piece of tile, then we have other techniques for applying color on top of the tile, such as silk screening or laser cutting of etches and all sorts of things. So those are the two options. So first thing is you have 240 colors. Now you have about 50 sizes that we work with. Next slide. Next one. Are you there?
I just
Oh,
wanted to unmute myself
okay.
because we
Okay.
also have multiple finishes and textures
Thank you, Gabriela.
that we can mix and match in multiple
right.
way.
So this particular tile, it starts off as a sheet of glass that's cut to a size that we're looking for. And then as we put it in the kiln, it has two functions or three functions. The first function is to bond the color to the glass. The second one is to round out the edges so they're not sharp. And the third one, because we're now softening the glass, we can add texture to the glass. So it accomplishes the three things at once. So now going back to sort of designing with this, Gabriela's got a slide here. So you can see that the most obvious thing is to take this little pixel and start designing some pattern with it. And in this case, it's a design by Derek Root. We've worked with Derek on 3 projects and really enjoy working with him. And, you know, he's taken this, the little pixel and rotated it at 45 degrees so that it follows the pattern, gives you a little nice line on this. In order to create this kind of work, we take the colors that we need, we make the size of tiles, and we have a bunch of tiles, and we have a little robot that picks and places these in following a pattern. And so that is one technique. So this is like the most common technique using tiles is to do a mosaic. And that's an example of a mosaic. What we have also here, Gabriela is showing us some different shapes that we can bend the glass. For example, if we're doing steps or edges, we can bend it at 90 degrees. And then we can also add, in the case of fountains or swimming pools, we can add logos and other work to it. This particular slide here now is just showing the application that we have come up with for different designs. So in terms of how we work with you as an artist is you will have an idea and if you can, show us what you're working with. And then we'll come up with different techniques that we think might suit your work and support what you're trying to do in a way that meets your requirements. So in this particular, this one is a relatively recent project that we did, a capstan station in TransLink in Richmond. And Howie is the artist, Howie Tsui is the artist, and he chose 2 colors. And so one side of the station is the dark color and the other side is the lighter gold color. And he had this idea of so underwater scene, and it's a very large project. So, you know, he has an idea, he has a relatively small drawing that we look at, we talk about it, we did a lot of prototyping to make sure that the colors are right, the technique's right, the contrast of the colors is working out. And then Gabriela worked out this mapping for the entire project so that we can manufacture the tiles in a shop, put them in boxes, and then that gets shipped to the job site. And then Translink had their own, well, the general contractor had their own tile contractor put this up using the mapping that you can see here. So, so each tile is located exactly on the piece of paper, is located where it's going to go on the job site. And so we work it out with the installer to say, okay, we need to start installing from the bottom up or the top down, or, you know, middle to the right or whatever. And then we actually box all the tiles so that they're very easy to find. Each tile, in this case, the back of the tile has got a laser etched number and location on the drawing. So if you were to pick up a tile, you could locate it where it's supposed to go. The other thing that's really important here is for the execution of this is to make sure that no tile is so precious that it couldn't be replaced. And so if they happen to drop one and break one, they'll give us a call and say, hey, I need this tile H21. Can you make it again? Or, you know, there was a problem cutting and, you know, we made a mess and need to replace it. So, so these things are designed so that they're, once it leaves our factory, it's very, very easy to have a separate installer pick it up and install it. So we ship these all over the world. And so they can be installed in Dubai or they can be installed in Richmond. And generally speaking, they'll understand how to put it together. Okay. These are examples of other projects that we've done. This one particular wall is done by, it was a design by Derek Rook again. And so we provided him with a mosaic. This design follows the shadows that are created by the sunlight coming through the roof, and it creates a shadow. So he took that idea and he created this kind of diagonal design. And you can see a close-up here. So these are tiny tiles, and the tiles are offset just by the right angle so that they follow the pattern that he wanted. So in this, we were able to change the robot so that it would pick up and place the tiles in this particular pattern. And even though we have 240 colors, they weren't enough because Derek was trying to create this texturing of the colors within each of the panels. So we had to create an extra 180 colors that were not in our standard range in order to make this work. And you can see here the design, and again, the same idea where we've mapped it all out, and so that the installer then has a relatively easy task of putting it together. Okay. The next one, Gabrielle. Okay, so this again is a Derek Root project. It's the convention center, and one of the things we like about well, first of all, let me tell you a little bit about this project. So it had to be, I think, platinum, so LEED platinum, which meant that we had to find recycled product in order to all the raw material recycled. So we're within the required distance from manufacturing to the installation. Derek had provided us with a little wooden airbrush idea that he had that was essentially, I don't know, 16 inches by whatever width, and said, that's what I'm trying to do. So here's a case where, you know, working together, and I think if you talk to Derek, you'll find out that he was very, very happy with the fact that we were able to create something that was beyond what he first started with. And when you look at it from far away, this thing is like, each panel is like 200 feet long and on the floor of the convention center. And as you come down the escalator, you have a great view of his idea. So this is sort of represent a ray of light coming into the middle of the room and then spreading out like water around. So these wave-like effects. This project here is a design that was brought to us where we interpret it as a mosaic, and same idea. So we prepare all the parts. They come out as sheets of 12 by 12 inches. Each sheet is numbered, labeled, and located on the project. you can see our staff on the,
Oh,
standing next to it there. And so the last slide here is the York Theatre in Vancouver, where they were refurbishing the theater, and they wanted to bring a lot of color into the old building. And so the lobby was done with these very bright bands of color and a lot of texturing in the color. This is it was a 2x6 inch tile, and then the outside is very, very bright red. So some of the things that you'll recognize right away is that the tile can be used indoors, outside, floors. It's very colorful, and that color is very, very permanent, and it doesn't fade. It doesn't, there's not the glass is not affected by cold weather and so forth. So this one is the inlet station, TransLink again. And it was an interesting project because they had a budget to do the lobby, and then they ran out of money. But then the contractor screwed up one of the walls, and the pour was all wobbly. And suddenly they found the money because they had to fix this wobbly wall. So we had a last-minute job that to put up this colorful tiles. Again, one side of the station is blue, the other one side is green. And so that's for wayfinding. And but we had to prepare the panels in-house so that they were shipped as already tiled portions that then were applied to this wobbly wall and covered things up because they were running behind schedule. So we produced most of the tile in-house already panelized. And this one is one of our standard projects is a swimming pool with a gradation, so meaning light to dark, and then as a residential project, we do many of these, but the same idea would, if you needed to do a fountain and so forth, again, it illustrates the flexibility. This is an interior swimming pool, same idea. It illustrates the flexibility of tile. This project, I can't name the owner of the project because of an NDA, but you can see an example of tiles that are not squares and rectangles, they're round. And so that it doesn't, you're not bound by particular shapes. We do triangles, we do other things depending on the type of requirement. So that's about it. Okay. So I think what I'd like to say is that we live out of commercial work, swimming pools and bathrooms and kitchens and so forth, but we really love doing this kind of work. That's what makes us go to work every day, is when we have the ability to take what we do on a regular basis and apply it and make it something really special out of it. And so our job, we think of ourselves as being here to support your work. You bring us the idea, and then we'll work out on the type of work that we can do in terms of fabrication in order to make that work, and hopefully do it within a budget. And so because our tile is, the project at some point ends up being relatively similar, we can actually budget these fairly quickly. So over the years, I can tell you their standard tiles are about $25 a square foot, but these projects end up being about $50 a square foot. And so I'll give you a starting point. I mean, we've done 24 karat gold tiles that are not $50 a square foot, but we do have sort of this kind of budget, and so you can have that as a starting point. And then typically the process is to get us your artwork. Gabriela then puts it in software that we created that, takes that and pixelates it. And then we can map out exactly how we're going to put it together. And it's a relatively quick way to find out how it's going to turn out. Gabriela, did you have anything else to add?
No, I think you covered all the areas. I noticed there are a few questions that maybe we can reply later.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, all of you. As Noticing now, as I've had time to look in the chat, there's been a lot of thank yous. And people saying awesome, fantastic work. So yes, you've definitely shared some amazing pieces. And I'll go through the questions. I see Peter has been in the background answering all the questions specific to him, but if there's any more for, general questions that everyone like to hear, I can read those out as well. Something that kind of touches on everyone is something I'm curious about, and maybe each of you can answer this. So if an artist comes to you with a project, sort of what would be the general timeline? Knowing size is going to make a big difference, but like what sort of time frame are we looking at from start to finish when you work with an artist? I don't know, Peter, if you want to go first, and then Jock.
It depends obviously on the complexity of the artwork, and also when is the artwork required. We're doing one now that the developer has engaged the architect, the artist to provide this piece of art, but it's a year down the line. So I have found that most of the time the artists are engaged in sufficient time to design, prototype, fabricate, and then deliver it and install it. So I think I have not really found rush jobs, really important rush jobs that have come, because the artwork is usually generally considered way in advance. So I would say on some of that big stainless steel job that we did in Lansdowne Park, you need at least a year there. But some of the smaller things, the Heron, half a year. So you do need time for modeling, getting approval from the city, getting engineering approval, doing mock-ups, prototypes. And so you need to, every artist would need to build that into their timeline. And we can assist with that too.
Thanks. Jock, same question. What's the average timeline from the time an artist contacts you to project completion?
Generally, there's a bit of a waiting time, but probably for smaller pieces, let's say 36 inches high, 5 to 6 months. For large pieces, can be a year and a half. It depends on how complex it is and how big it is, how much preparation the artist has gone into in terms of supplying me with the model, the positive. So it's really truly each one I have to consider individually, but size is a major component.
Thanks. And Kim, for your
so ours is a little bit easier to get produced, because again, we have robots, we have the components are readily available. So we typically quote 12 weeks as a standard. But we'll work from there. The one that we did for the convention center was an incredible rush because they were trying to open it. So we had to do it in, that particular one, I think we did it under 3 weeks. So from working with the artist on the weekends, and then the architect got involved on the weekends as well. And then we're just rushing, trying to get it out. And so we can really accelerate that. This particular one that you see here, the station in Capson Station, we were ready in, I don't know, probably 12 weeks, but then the project took, I can't remember, it's 3 years. So we're sitting on this for a long time, which is very typical for tile, because you have the design phase and then you wait until the whole building's ready. The very last thing that goes on is the finishing tiles, one of those things. So
Kim,
not rushed.
Yeah. Kim, I noticed one question of
okay. I don't see questions, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
No.
Someone was asking about the photo of someone painting onto the tile.
Oh yes.
About that. And I just want to say, because we just did a talk with Howie Sui last month, and he was raving about you, saying what a
Gabriella, not me.
Yeah.
No.
What a great process it was, and really got his vision beyond his vision. Like, he could not have imagined this. So if you want to talk a little bit about that process and how you came up with these tiles.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can explain all the process to get each of these tile made, they were more than 3,000 handmade, handcrafted tiles.
Yeah, so what's interesting often with this, the scale that the artist is thinking is very small, fits a piece of paper. And then, but the installation is gigantic. None of us have ever seen it. And, you know, and we're all just raring to go and find out what will it look like. So we're always, you know, like, okay, will it work? In every case, though, we have to develop a technique. So in Howie's case, the technique was that we made a basic tile, 16 by 16, then take his drawings and map it all out. So Gabriela did that work. And then we map out each tile. In that particular case, we have the background tile and the foreground of the design are contrasting colors, so relatively easy. So what we did here was to make the basic tile, then we cover the front of the tile with a mask and use a laser to cut out the mask, and then peel off the areas that we want to expose to the darker color, the contrasting color, and then apply that color, peel off the rest of the mask, and put it in the kiln. And then we have this very large scale of numbers of tiles. So we have also the backside of the tiles lasered with the design so that we know where it belongs. Sorry, Gabriel.
Yeah, so in this case, we masked the entire 16 by 16 with this paper adhesive. We peel off the section that needed to be exposed to the contrasting color. We hand painted that area. We let the paint dry. And when it was dry, we removed also the other part of the paper. And then we put the tile in the kiln, and we fire the tile at 700 degrees. And then the tile was done.
I think there was a question regarding what looks like a hand-painted tile. You see that's a different technique that we've developed more recently. It's sort of a digital process of applying the glazes. The next one, I think. One more. There you go. One before that. There you go. So that one is really no different, except that we're using a digital process for applying the colors. It is a far more delicate process, and the durability of that isn't the same as our regular pixelated tile. So there is a limitation where it can be used. We like it to be interior, not exposed to the elements outside and not underwater. So it is a little bit more limited, but of course, it does allow for much higher resolution, as you can see here. And it doesn't particularly matter that if it's wall or floor, but what we want to make sure is that it's not so exposed to elements that it would be where the technique would be so delicate that it would start to crumble or fall apart. So digital means that that each droplet of ink is a tiny, tiny little droplet that is applied to the glass. And that's why it's more delicate, because you're superimposing the CMYK model to the glass. And over time, they might change, and then this would look different. So if interior applications, it's great.
Another question specific to InterStyle. Do you only use glass tile, or do you use ceramic or other tile?
No, these are all examples of glass, but we definitely have done, and we do ceramic and porcelain. So we can color ceramic, porcelain. It's all the same process. The reason why we use glass primarily is because the color rendition is so much brighter. We have no color to start with, so the colors that we apply remain very pure. In ceramics and in porcelains, they tend to, because of the higher temperatures, they tend to fade out and change. And in some cases, the colors just don't exist. So especially if you're using a cyan So, you know, you might want to be able to print it a CMYK model, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. Well, in ceramics, the cyan and the magenta don't exist, period. There's nothing in nature that makes a cyan or a magenta color. Therefore, you have to find all sorts of other combinations to try to replicate that. And it makes it much harder to do.
Yeah. Another question, Kim, is can you do metallic coatings on glass, gold, silver, copper?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, the answer is yes. So we do regularly 24 karat gold and platinum. They can be applied and melted on the glass. They're very, very expensive, so it's not every job has that kind of a budget. So we do use metallics, and metallics are not unlike the paint that's used in a car. It has a metal flake in it, and you can mix that into the colors, and they resist the firing, and they look pretty good. And then there are different coatings that are applied to the glass itself that are vaporized on top of the glass. And so if you look at the outside of many of the high rises in town, there's sometimes the gold looking color on the windows, or a sort of a bluish color on the windows. Those are examples of vaporized color on the glass. So, and that's also a possibility. And those vaporized colors are metal. So copper vaporized on the glass will give you this gold color. So we do have that option.
If you go to our website, interstyleglass.com, or on our Instagram page, there are some examples of gold metallic tiles we have done in the past for a few projects.
Our 240 color range includes several that are metallic.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question for Jock. Someone is asking if you use different alloys for your bronze.
No, actually, I use one alloy, and that's an alloy called Everdur. The reason for that is each alloy gives a different reaction to chemicals. If I use one alloy, that being Everdur, that means I know what the patina is going to be like when I apply it. If something has more copper in it, or more zinc in it, or any of the little bits of metal that go into making up an alloy, then the reaction to the patinas are going to be entirely different. So in order to really have a good idea about the final product's going to be when I apply a patina, the chemicals, that's why I keep that particular alloy.
Thank you. And related to that, a question for you about what is the rough cost or range for bronze pieces depending on size?
Oy, oy, oy. I mean, you can have little tiny ones like this, and I'm just looking at right now two pieces that I'm quoting on. I will be, and when this is done, and they're figurative types. One is probably about, and they're seated figures, very abstract. Probably the one that's about 20 inches. We're probably looking at $2,000 or $3,000 for that. The other one we're looking at considerably more. It really truly depends on the size and the complexity of the piece.
Thank you. Another question for all of you, and I think Peter already answered partly, was just if any of you are taking on new project, or what is the booking timeline to work with you? So maybe Jock, if you want to start with that, are you taking on new projects?
I am. I'm about be at probably 6 months out before I can take on another one.
Okay. And Peter, you left your email in the Q&A.
Yeah, it all depends, of course, on what kind of product. If it's very small, a couple months. But like I said, most of them range that 6 to 12 months. And so that's in end of the year. Next year, we have capacity to work and quote on any of those.
And Kim?
Sure. Well, most of our work is what we do every day, so we're not constrained in any way. So we're able to take on any size project. At the moment, it would be the standard 12 weeks to get to finish. But yes, and we do have some flexibility as well, because we're always working on a number of things, and then we can sort of jockey and sometimes combine projects. If we're just making the pixels, that's not anything unusual. If we had 3 jobs that required the robots to assemble, maybe we'd be slower at doing that. But generally speaking, we're not constrained at the moment.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions, and thank you, panelists, for being in the background and answering questions for me as well as we go along. Someone saying thank you for the inspirations. Definitely, there's a lot of amazing work to share and to hear about in the process. I know there's always a lot of interest from artists who want to get started with public art. I don't know if you had any maybe tips for someone who's never done this scale of project before. Any advice for an artist who wants to get started working in public art? Maybe something from each of you. I don't know, Peter, did you want to kick it off?
I think getting a budget, or what we call pre-construction advice or help, is always the best way, because ultimately you're talking about any art piece, you're talking about money. And you go too far down the road with your chrome plated giant piece that can't even be transported, and get some budget prices and scale it so that it's within your budget. I think money is a big can be an obstacle, and so make sure you sort out your budget, and that's where you can talk to any of us that can give advice on that.
Thank you. Jock, any advice for artists?
Yeah, I do have some advice, and I'm speaking as an artist because primarily I am an artist. That's my love, and that is to get a portfolio, really professional portfolio put together. Start with small. Get Auntie May to commission a piece for her garden, and then start going from there. Because what people are looking for is not just the aesthetic. But they're also looking for a history that assures them that you're going to be able and capable to produce the piece that they're looking for. So start small. It's nice when you start big, but it doesn't happen very often, that's for sure. And build a really good professional portfolio. First thing people see is your portfolio. It is so important to have that look really professional and not slapped together, because the slapped together one ain't going to get looked at.
Thank you. Kim and Gabriella, any tips for artists who want to get started?
I would recommend that you just do not get intimidated. Go for it. And put many out there, and you'll get some. Yeah. It takes a lot of work to put it together, I understand, but we're here to support you. So Gabriella will be very happy, right, Gabriella?
Yeah.
To do all the work
yes,
that's required to make your project look good. Yeah.
And we are always happy when the artists come to visit us, and we take around our factory here in Port Coquitlam. It's always very inspiring and very fascinating seeing things from real, and we welcome you to come visit us to learn more about how it works.
Great. Thank you. Well, I think we learned a lot today. Like, I know I certainly did, about each of your processes and some of the great projects you've done. So thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. I don't see any more questions, so I think we're going to close for today and just say thank you to everyone out there for joining us. Just so you know, we do have another Art at Work coming up, but it'll be in person in June for how to prepare for an art market to sell your work. I did get a little message from Billiana at Public Art, just to let you know as well. They are offering tours of all the artworks along the Canada line, which includes Capstan Station, from May to September. So they will be sending you, if you signed up via email, they'll be sending you info about those coming up. They're free tours, but you actually get to hear more in depth about each of those pieces along the Canada line, of which Kim and Gabriella were part of one. So hopefully you can join us for that, or hopefully we can see you next month at our next Art at Work. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and a really big thank you to our presenters for this great presentation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
An honor.
Thank you. Bye.